Welcome to the number one coverage on Super Tuesday you're going to see. So the afterglow and the aftermath, frankly, has been utterly appalling to watch because now we have Nikki Haley dropping out the race. And you would have thought, well, I mean, isn't that kind of logical? But to me, who's been watching this from the beginning, you hear nothing but, well, actually, in 2024, I won't run if Trump runs. Nikki Haley runs for president, so she lies. But then she goes on and tells her donors after millions of dollars, blood, sweat, and tears are poured into donation checks for the Haley campaign, for her to keep on running no matter what the results are. And after she wins Vermont and that's it. Well, she drops out. So she misleads everybody, gaslights even me to think, well, she's going to stick around until the convention. Turns out she just gives up. Now, that is awesome news for Donald Trump. That saves them tens of millions of dollars at least in campaigning, saves a lot on door knockers, whatever have you. And I got to say, that means basically that if you're door knocking for Trump, you can just give up now. I mean, you're already winning the primary. It's awesome news. Also, keep in mind that when it comes to Nikki Haley, part of the reason why she stayed in the race for personal reasons is because, after Super Tuesday, Trump could still get indicted and arrested and jailed before, the presidency were to have the election were to happen, which is to say, obviously, that with Nikki Haley, she was hoping that he ended up in jail and then something crazy happens or he had a stroke, but she gave up on that. She gave up on that fact because either the donors weren't going to do that escapade and because they weren't willing to fund that, which is very plausible and also really positive for Trump, or Nikki Haley herself said, the odds of him going to jail are so low, I'm not even going to embarrass myself by waiting and, gasping on air for that. So what we're looking at now is that the odds of him going to jail must be really low if she's dropping out too, because any opportunist would have stayed in the race so that they could become the presumptive nominee. But instead, they're saying, well, not to lock in for Trump. So now if you want to bet on predicted, if Trump's going to be the nominee, you might as well. All right, folks. So while most people would be going over the margins and the maps, people won't cover this, and this is super important to understand. Republicans spent more than $303 million on ads during the presidential primary. So think about that. Now that the campaign is over for Nikki Haley, that means that Trump can spend virtually nothing on the primary. Now imagine that. Now, Trump didn't spend $300 million on the primary. It was all the other Republicans. But obviously, if Trump were just the nominee and nobody else ran, then, all that money would be his, basically. And if that's the case, then imagine having an extra $300 million for the general election in ads and in buying votes. And by buying votes, I mean like facilitating, bussing people out and whatnot, all these legalities you can exploit. Okay, these things are super important to understand because most people don't read into this. Most people have no grasp over political spending. But when we're dealing with a Democratic Party that has a lot more funding than does America First politicians and the Republican Party, then it's very evident for people that we spend as little money during the primary so that we can win the general. Now that she's out the way, Namrata that's going to open up like crazy. All right, now let's look at what Nikki Haley said. We could go over the Trump speech, but obviously he won. So let's see what the loser says. So think about it. You have to have your game face because you just took the biggest L of your life. You're quitting. Your political career is basically over. Now she's going to be a consultant for some company, basically.
Good morning. Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for president. When I began, I said the campaign was grounded in my love for our country. Just last week, my mother, a first-generation immigrant, got to vote for her daughter for president. Only in America. I am filled with the gratitude for the outpouring of support we've received from all across our great country. But the time has now come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets. And although I will no longer be a candidate, I will not stop using my voice for the things I believe in. Our national debt will eventually crush our economy. A smaller federal government is not only necessary for our freedom, it is necessary for our survival. The road to socialism is the road to ruin for America. Our Congress is dysfunctional and only getting worse. It is filled with followers, not leaders. Term limits for Washington politicians are needed now more than ever. Our world is on fire because of America's retreat. Standing by our allies in Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan is a moral imperative. But it's also more than that. If we retreat further, there will be more war, not less. As important, while we stand strong for the cause of freedom, we must bind together as Americans. We must turn away from the darkness of hatred and division. I will continue to promote all those values, as is the right of every American.
So
I
boring.
saw the honor of being your president. But in our great country, being a private citizen is privilege enough in itself. And that's a
Oh, dude,
privilege
the
I've been
cope. Being a private citizen is a privilege. So just existing. I mean, this is what like every middle-aged Hispanic woman thinks. Like, oh, I'm so lucky to be here. I mean, like, how about something else? Like, really? Oh, yeah, private citizen. It's so great. If it were so great, then why were you trying to become a public person by running for president? It's a cope.
very much look forward to enjoying. In all likelihood, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee when our party convention meets in July. I congratulate him and wish him well.
You
I
do
wish
not. No, come on, man. When you're a politician, at least pretend to think something. You're not going to be of the opinion of like, oh my God, it's so great, but also at least pretend. She can't even pretend. I mean, she wouldn't be a good stripper. I mean, she can't even put on a game face. I mean, it's insane.
anyone well who would be America's president. Our country is too precious to let our differences divide us. I have always been a conservative Republican and always
That's
supported
not
the
fucking true.
Republican
No,
nominee.
that is not true, bro. Come on, really? Conservative Republican? That's like if somebody who's in the NBA who's 6'1" says, I've always been a strong 6-footer. No, you haven't been. Okay. There's guys way taller than you in your own league. Okay. So saying, oh, I'm a very conservative Republican. No, you're not. By what standard? Ted Cruz? No, he laps you. Donald Trump, more conservative. Okay.
Nominee. But on this question, as she did on so many others, Margaret Thatcher provided some good advice when she said, quote, never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind. It is
And you lost. Don't follow the crowd. And yeah, you didn't give votes.
now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that. At its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause, not turning them away. And our conservative cause.
See, that might make sense, but that's only if you win the election. You're like, that person shot himself in the foot. But with Donald Trump, yeah, he could be a douche with the way that he suggests people to vote for him and alienates people, but he's still winning. So if he's still winning, then whatever you're saying as a criticism sounds like pocket watching and hating, here, player hating.
Cause badly needs more people. This is now his time for choosing. I end my campaign with the same words I began it, from the book of Joshua. I direct them to all Americans, but especially to so many of the women and girls out there who put their faith in our campaign. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for God will be with you wherever you go. In this campaign, I have seen our
So the ultimate cope passage of like, oh, God's going to be with you because you lost. Tough.
country's greatness. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, America. God bless you.
That was it. So let's read what he said on Truth Social. He says, Nikki Haley got trounced last night in a record-setting fashion, despite the fact that Democrats, for various reasons unknown, are allowed to vote in Vermont and various other Republican primaries. Much of their money came from the radical left Democrats, as did many of their voters, almost 50%. Folks, that's a lot, according to the polls. So, okay, so, he's being really conciliatory, not. So, I mean, he's really just rubbing it in her face. But, I mean, it's well-deserved, in my opinion. It's perfect. I wanted to be thorough, so we're going to include some bits of the Trump speech. But I mean, look at this. So, granted, with if you know about politics, when you have candidates speak and you're broke, you're going to have like purple, blue lighting to make it look cool, and you're going to have like a very shitty kind of like lifted off platform that's only maybe a couple feet off from the surface, and then like the lectern or whatever you do to speak on. But that's about it. Now, Donald Trump actually has $1 million home or whatever in Mar-a-Lago. So now all of a sudden, $1 million. What am I, an idiot? It's tens of millions of dollars maybe. But anyway, so Mar-a-Lago is very expensive. He has this like ballroom and he's got all of these super nice flags. So even though he's not even in office, he still gets to look presidential, which is kind of important for the subconscious of the vote. Okay, so I watched the entire thing from the Trump speech, 19 minutes, folks. He doesn't even mention Haley once in this thing, which kind of shows that he's big dogging her, ignoring her existence, and honestly, that's pretty fun. All right, so as we all know, the delegate count is looking pretty good for Trump. He got over 1,000, and he basically almost secured the nomination on Super Tuesday by itself, and that's with less than half the states having voted already, I think. So that's pretty impressive for one. And then two, it's also doubly impressive that he got Nikki Haley to drop out when he did, because he did sweep the entirety of Super Tuesday. And you could argue, like, no, actually, Trump lost Vermont, but you have to realize that it was an open primary. And that, you know what? This is another banger. Half, or I think it was actually 48% of Nikki Haley voters in Vermont thought that Joe Biden was doing a good job. So what does that mean? How many Republicans in general in a primary think Joe Biden's doing a good job? It's got to be less than 15%. Well, if that's true, then how come it's 50% when it comes to Nikki Haley voters? It means that, like, there's triple the amount of Biden support among the Nikki Haley voters, which means that a huge portion of Nikki Haley voters are Biden voters that aren't voting Republican. They're voting for Biden. So what that means is that, oh, let's say Nikki Haley won Vermont by 51%. No, she actually got like 38%, and then a third of the vote that she got was Joe Biden Democrats. And so that doesn't really count against Trump, in my opinion. And I think anybody with a modicum of degree of, certainty in regards to partisan voting understands this fact that the Democrats are just trying to poison the well with Nikki Haley and protesting Donald Trump in a vain effort to make him lose 1 out of 16 states on Super Tuesday. I mean, it's irrelevant. They did all this effort. They got thousands of people to vote in protest to Donald Trump under the banner of Nikki Haley, and she still dropped out. And she also, got Trump the nomination. Now he's the presumptive nominee, and it's a great thing to watch. So, those are the conclusions. Joe Biden underperformed, like you expected. Uncommitted votes through the roof due to the Gaza thing in Michigan. The Arabs are super pissed. And what's more, again, the Minnesota, again, 30% of people in Minnesota in the Democratic primary voted uncommitted or basically didn't vote for Biden, which is insane because there's nobody really running against him, not even RFK technically. And so if that's the case, then, Joe Biden's looking horrible. The turnout's depressing for them. The Democrats seem more enthused to vote for Nikki Haley, ironically enough, just to spite Donald Trump than they were to vote for Joe Biden. So, that's kind of pathetic. And so the results for the Republican Party in the MAGA frame has been phenomenal for Super Tuesday, and that is your analysis. Thank you very much. Adios.